What's going on, Workforce? Brian and Chris here, and today we're talking full Endwalker spoilers. We're talking our impressions, our thoughts about the latest expansion. I think Chris has it right. That is a beautiful emote.
Oh,
And so honestly, thanks to everybody who's been able to tune in. Chris has been live reacting, so one of the things I got to do finally is go look at y'all's clips that you've made from y'all's reaction to my playthrough. And you still got a little bit to go through. Is there any plan there you want to kind of promote before we dive into it?
I'd love to get through the rest of it this week. I will say the Omni 90 race is very real. So, and the World First race starts tomorrow as of this recording. And I'd like to watch that. And Mr. Happy said on his stream, I got to hang out in all sorts of people's streams today because I had enough internet to consume content, but I didn't have any upload. And so I was listening to streams while I was working today, which was really neat to get to hang out in other people's streams. And he said he thinks it's going to be under a 16-hour race.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, well, if it's under 16, should I be there for the whole thing? For the first team, he thinks the second place team could easily exceed 24 hours. He thinks TPS has it by that far.
Oh, wow. That's a huge chunk.
Yeah. He said them broadcasting. He goes, anybody else broadcasting versus not broadcasting, it'd be an advantage. He thinks they have it by too far for the broadcasting to make a difference.
Interesting.
He's like, I'm glad they're going to share.
And they're actually sharing it this time. So that's going to be something really exciting to see. I have yet to step into any of the raids, so I haven't seen the raid yet. I haven't seen the level 90 dungeons outside of the dead ends. So essentially from a content perspective, I think I need to try to get that maybe knocked out maybe this evening. I don't know. We'll have to see, just so that I can hopefully watch and enjoy alongside you. So maybe you'll be shoutcasting it. Who knows, guys? Go check out Chris over on Twitch tomorrow and find out what he's covering, as well as the race for Omni 90 officially kind of heats up now that we both have finished the story. Wow. So there was so much, like the moment where you step into Elpis, I was like, Chris got what he wanted.
I know. I've seen that part of your stream.
Chris got what he wanted. Oh my goodness. He's been wanting to go to the world of the Unsundered, and obviously just a fraction of it, but Elpis was gorgeous.
Yeah, but it's a zone.
Yeah.
So like we can go back.
We can keep going back.
Done with it.
Well, and Emmett Selk's,
give me more.
Emmett Selk's word to us, like essentially like, hey, you don't even know the identity of the 12. Hey, have you been to Mericidia? Hey, have you seen the golden cities of the freaking New World? Hey, have you seen the reflections? They're incredible. You should totally go check them out. And I'm like, okay, like, oh, Yoshi P's putting out his 10-year plan.
There's roadmap right there.
Right there, roadmap. Now, what's the order? I don't know. But I thought that was, I think, a really cool moment because it's like, yeah, there's these other things. So first and foremost, like the persistent thought that I had after I finished it was, who was this other soul that Heidelin, shepherded across to the source? I don't know. I don't feel like we ran into him, at least yet for me. So that's still kind of a thread that's, go ahead.
One of the things I don't know if you've been told or not is Azem's gender, just so that we're all speaking in the same thing. Azem's gender is your gender.
Yeah.
So Azem is female for me, which means if Azem is ever shown to us, it will likely be an Ascian in a mask,
right,
so that it can remain genderless.
Right. So and I think they said he, or
yours was always he, and it kept throwing me off because I play as a female character, so it was she. So when they first hinted that it was Azem, I was like, oh my gosh, they're talking about Vana, because they said she and didn't reveal who. As opposed to you immediately then wonder totally different things because you're immediately thinking of every male character it could be.
Well, because originally I was like, did they bring over Ring or something like that, right? Like, did they bring a character from the first to us that all of a sudden has like a stake, and it's like, hey, that's how that character decided that they're going to connect from Shadowbringers over here. But I did actually really enjoy that drawn out perspective of the quest line where you're kind of looking around to and fro. And then it's like, and then she showed up, and I was like, oh, okay, well, Reen's still here, so I don't know who that might be. So do we find that out, like, as a part of this post game quests, etc.? Like, do you know who this person is?
So the only thing I've done that you have not done, of significant story is the raid story.
Right.
So that's it. Otherwise, you're caught up with me.
Well, right. So there, yeah, I didn't think there was any big revelation. So I think that's going to play out. So I was also looking for like, what was the seed that Yoshi?
And the raid story exists in some weird. It's meant to be done after MSQ, so
Right.
logically the MSQ is concluded. So logically you have wrapped up the saga. But also he said with 6.1 we begin something anew. And so going into the raid series blind, there is this question of like, where does the raid story fit? Are they setting up for the future, or is this a, after the credits, I've stayed through the end, one last thing? But then how can it be a last thing? Because this story now needs to continue with 6.2 and 4, assuming past patterns hold. And so the raid series sits in a really weird spot from a Final Fantasy 14 pacing standpoint. From what you and I know, like if you just write down all the things in every patch, it sits in a weird spot when you suddenly draw a line in the sand in the middle of the patches, because in the past there were no lines, so it didn't matter that some content drips over patches and some doesn't. So it's in a weird spot.
Yeah, immediately that's what I felt. I felt that I was like, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to go with it. I'm more excited about Mists of the Realm with exploring the 12. Okay. The fact that obviously,
can we have a beast tribe in Elpis, please?
Well, I guess
because I asked for one in Amaro in the Tempest, and we didn't get one. And they're like, well, but they're not real people, so it can't be a beast tribe. Okay, well now they are real people. So like, your move.
Your move. You're untempered beast tribe. And then in the Lollop, I think the Loprits are a good case for that. Go to something where we see them.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Because I don't know how long I have until the internet guy gets here today. So I have a question to you. So we know that a couple of Ascians were unsundered.
Yes, 3.
Okay. Now the Loperites were made after the sundering, so they are logically unsundered.
Yes. And they have creation magic.
The dragons arrived after the sundering, so they are unsundered.
Correct.
Is Argos unsundered?
Argos existed prior. Oh my gosh. I don't know.
Did the goodest boy make it through as an unsundered? She's like, I have room to not sunder 3 Ascians and a dog.
Of course you don't sunder the dog.
You
don't sunder dogs.
What monster sunders their own dog?
I didn't see no like Argos.
Because Argos has the ability to spin themselves up into multiple dogs, which is pretty powerful for a dog. So it kind of made me think
he sunders himself in that regard.
Argos might be unsundered.
I think you're right. I think you're right. We'll have to see. We'll have to go to the lore people, get Anonymous and kind of weigh in. Is Argos unsundered? We gotta know. Gotta know. Am I riding an unsundered mount? I have to say, okay. I want to know from your perspective. Obviously, like we took out Hydaelyn. Like that was so powerful. That was such a moment, especially when she drew her sword. So if you haven't watched that yet, I was like freaking out.
I haven't made it there yet.
And Hydaelyn and Zodiark were my predictions of trials.
I just wondered. I thought Hydaelyn would be the end, and what's her name would be the second trial.
Medion.
I thought Medion would be second trial.
And then all of a sudden Hydaelyn's like, there's nothing, there's no reason I should exist.
And then either Hydaelyn would rear up and be too powerful, and we would have to just end her because she becomes drunken in rage, like in power,
right?
Or she's falling apart and we have to put her out of her misery.
Otherwise everything kind of
because to balance everything.
In the fact that we had to, like, that was the final like test to see if we were strong enough to go up against Medion and Dynamis, which was great. I love that callback.
Which I did that in one sitting, so I was like, of course I'm strong enough. I beat you like 2 hours ago.
I know.
Like, I know you think 12,000 years passed, but like I haven't even slept since then.
I haven't slept. We're going. I like that aspect, but then the fact that obviously like the worlds remain sundered. Like it wasn't like, hey, we did this thing and then all of a sudden it was like, okay, and zip. So I thought that was really interesting to see, because I guess if that was the case, that if defeating Hydaelyn removed the sundering, then the Ascians probably would have just been trying to go after her the whole time, as opposed to doing their whole rejoining of Calamity's process. So it made sense that Echo stays,
sundering stays. Those are actions taken, not spells kind of
cast,
held up.
Yeah.
Those
they
are actions
channeled.
Taken they
she wasn't actively channeling the keeping everything separate. I do appreciate the answer to the question of why, outside of the fact of imprisoning Zodiark, but so that we as mankind wouldn't be so aether rich that we couldn't go into the area of dynamic, the empty essentially being, and then and obviously when why am I drawing a blank on his name? Sacrificed himself to give us like the ability to have air and to be able to like survive in the empty. I do not know why I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Thancred.
Thank you. I was like, why am I like, I have his name blocked. That was really a cool moment. And then obviously as you work your way through that final zone and every person in your team like sacrifices himself.
So somebody told me Thancred died. That's when my chat went to emote only.
Yeah.
And that's when my consumption of the content pivoted. And we're going to hard consume, and we're no longer, and like that's when spoiler free.
I had to stop looking at chat because I couldn't stop like tearing up and crying.
So somebody told me Thancred died. So then when he died, I was just in this mix of emotions of like, I'm just mad that somebody told me. Yeah. And then I also didn't want to believe it.
Right.
And then the moment they kept dying, I'm kind of bummed they came back.
So the moment once I was like, he died, I was like, okay, I feel as if they're going to all sacrifice himself. And as soon as Estinian did it, I was like, okay, we're getting rid of everybody here. I don't know in what order and what emotions are. And so the emotional part of it was where they were identifying the core area of despair and how they're trying to offset that and to some degree, right? So for the dragons, they were so tired. Estinian used anger as an emotion to bring about that aspect, right? So it's like, it was interesting to see how that play out. And then essentially getting to the point where at first I didn't call back our friend. You didn't actually call back our friends. We called Idathis and Emixelk, and then they were like, yeah. And then he's like taunting you. He's like, you have the power to bring them back. Why don't you?
Because Justola pulled an Iron Man and told us not to.
Yeah.
And this can't all just be Harry Potter where we just undo things.
Right.
And because it loses its value. Like they talk so much about paying the tab, but like, is it really paying the tab? If you ever played a game with somebody where they have a choice to like keep their points or roll a die to see if they get more points, and then they roll the die and it doesn't work out their way, and like, you know what? Can I just keep my points? No. Like after they've seen the outcome?
Right.
Like, no, like that's the whole point. The whole point is that you had to risk something, and like all the way up until that zone, this whole expansion was just this masterpiece of highs and lows. And the last zone, the escort quest, I think at one point I checked in at like one of the like optional points, and the optional thing was like, this is a hill, it goes up, and I was like, thank you. And then like Yashtola's like, you have to let us go, and we do, and then we don't. Like, and I think the frustrating part is that we didn't bring them back at 6.1. I had the same frustration with Yashtola in Shadowbringers, where like I did it in one I didn't even log out. So like in one sitting, I went from losing them to getting them. I logged in, had them intact, logged out, had them intact. There's no grieving process. There's no, oh, thank God. It's no, like you were barely gone.
It's hard because essentially then if like who should have not returned, right? Like the fact with creation magic, like how they orchestrated it, it's that either they're all gone and gone, or they're all back, because it's not like, oh, like imagine the power of like, you choose, you only have enough power to bring back 6 of them. Okay. It's like, I
think you have to go into some kind of empty and have a conversation with them and get that farewell and have that goodbye and realize that some of them are at the end of their journey.
The thing I do appreciate, because at the end of the day, like I am happy that we all survived this like crazy event, so, but you're right. Like Yoshi P said, there would be a tab that was paid. I didn't feel like that tab was paid. Like it felt like, it was paid.
Yeah, we got to the deal and you offered to pay it, and then I said no, I got it, and then I paid it, and you're like, see how good of a gesture I had by offering to pay? And it's like, yeah, but you didn't pay.
The thing I appreciate a lot is how Xenos got regulated to be a side story, and obviously
you like that.
I actually did, because throughout it I was just so annoyed by him. I've been so annoyed by him. Like I'm just tired of him and his one single-minded aspect, and I was like, are they going to try to find some redeeming like thing, like, oh, all this time I would like he's so boring as a character, right? Like he's so like, I clawed my way back from death so we could fight one last time, this battle of battles. Like it just is, in my mind, it's he's a train on the tracks, and he's been pointed in a direction, and he's gonna go and screw everybody else. Like he doesn't give a crap. And so
what if he was another part of Azem's soul?
that'd be interesting. That'd be like he got infused by it because he didn't have the echo. Like,
I mean, look at the aspect of Hermes that became Fandaniel, the Fandaniel of our present.
Okay.
That right? It was nothing but his exhausted despair, anger. So he was one note because that was all that was left of him by that point. It was that aspect of his soul. He was a sundered piece of Hermes that just represented all of that. And so all the one noteness of Fandaniel suddenly had all this complexity when you look at how the rest of him had just been eroded away.
Right.
And that was all that was left. What if Xenos had been shared
but
with
you're
us?
But you're
just
asking
like
that,
Ardbird.
Right. But you're asking that as a what if. They did not do that.
No, they did not do that.
Right. So it's like
he was left as a one-note character.
So he comes back,
nothing more than to not
and he
be a side
traveled
story.
all the way to the empty as a dragon. I thought that was cool, mind you. Like I was like,
and did not take part in the fight.
He didn't.
The whole fight. You get to the end, you're like, oh yeah, Xenos is here.
Yeah, he's just back there, down there at the bottom, just kind of keeping us, I guess, so we can fight this end singer. Medion. Well, I thought Medion was a far more an interesting character.
Weird flex, but okay.
Yeah, and then but then you fight, and I appreciated the fight. I appreciated that it wasn't a trial. I appreciate that it wasn't something grand and verbose. It's like 1v1, and that's one of the thing. Like when the thought I had in that moment was literally, I was like, back to our conversation of why would you finish the game as a Reaper? Would you want to do it? I was like, honestly, it was really cool. Reaper v Reaper. Like it was like reflections of one another fighting each other and then he gives us the label adventure again. This should be a video that we'll talk about like our expectations of what we think for the future in 2022. I think that's too big for this one video.
Post raid, please consume all of 6.0 mainline content.
I think this week and then we'll post that. We'll post that video up this week for you guys because I think that's what I keep getting asked a lot. What's happening next, Brian?
You don't have to do the role quest, but like get through the 4 bosses.
I plan on doing the role quest, but I'm going to do that.
But like that's when I think we'll have enough to make that conversation.
But at its core, I actually appreciated that fight, and then he and you both basically beat each other to death, and then we get saved by the teleporter. I thought that was a fun little callback. And then they heal you, and you come to, and it's like obviously you're recovering, and so now we are adventurers. The warrior light no more. That story has been concluded, and so I think that opens up the game to a lot of potential. And we'll have to see what they ultimately do with it. Yoshi P will have his announcements, but I thought this was an incredible story. I thought this was an incredible finish. This was I would say, without like overusing the word, a perfect bookend to this like now 12-year saga. For me, been covering the game for I guess now 13 years. If Yoshi P's been in charge for 12, so like. I thought
bookend is the right term.
Yeah, this was a really good bookend, and so yeah, this was great. I couldn't imagine it any better. I enjoyed like people who were hanging out with me. Will notice the laughing cry or the smiling cry. Like there's this, like in this case of emotion, in this case of dynamis and the power of emotion. Like there is joy and there is sorrow. There is like saying goodbye and at the same time like. Continuing to move forward because like, yes, the reality is you could not turn in the quest and everything just remains the exact way it always was. But, continuing to move forward and experiencing the journey. And then Alphino saying, hey, we're disbanding the Scions publicly. I was like, oh,
yeah, that was another one of those. We're disbanding them. I mean,
wow. But publicly. I was like, okay, that means in the shadows.
I mean, my phone has the time and everything.
Yeah. So I'm kind of curious what this will mean in terms of like primals and what this means in terms of like where the game goes this year. So obviously I'll jump into the raid series and things like that here, and we'll look forward to experiencing that at its core.
Yeah, so I mean, I saw some frustration in some of the previous videos that we filmed. I know you weren't able to be in the comments. Somebody was like, hey, this kind of felt like a little more predictable or whatever, like similar to A Realm Reborn. And I would say bookend is the right term there. Mm-hmm. There are aspects of ending and beginning a story that are a little bit like self-forced. They're constrained because it has to be an end. So you can't, you have to, everything has to reach a conclusion because it is the end. So I will say there are aspects of that where I can see how people that go into it, that maybe Shadowbringers was their first expansion and they wanted a second Shadowbringers, and instead they come in and they're like, well, oh, it's just everything ending. It's like, yeah, you caught the finale season. So like there are aspects of that I totally understand, where if what you wanted was a standard kind of middle expansion, it was not that thing. But I think as an ending, it was beautiful. It made me want to go back. It made me want to see if there are other references to Asians.
Mm-hmm.
It made me, Jesse Cox, I know, took a huge interest in like, who are all these other Asians? Like, there's all these other people, and are some of them ones that have been referenced? Are some of them ones? It starts to make me ask a ton of questions about Sundering. Have we interacted with their souls in the past in other ways? Have they been souls of ours? Would we recognize those names and their footprints,
Right.
in anything? And like, are we going to be able to draw connections? There are a ton of conversations there about kind of what that means, and it has their relationship with the ethereal sea and stuff starts to have all these religious overtones and all these questions of free will and all these questions of like, there's just a
Yeah,
lot there.
Graha's
There's a
lines
lot of
about
meat.
how like my soul's been, this and yet same soul but distinctly different persons, and yet also these are the things that I've done, and it's it's like wow, like yeah, there was a lot of context and mystery, I guess, in how that whole functions. With now we say Aetheris, like we've been calling the planet Heidelin this whole time, and it's so really cool to see the name change. And I thought that was like a really cool relevation from the Loprits, who I thought were like really great characters, especially in terms of like they're born out of their love of Aetheris and its people, and so they have this innate curiosity, this wanting to help, and this great powerful magic, and and so it was like, and at the same time they were created to have an appealing look so that they would be less intimidating as a part of this exodus, which
And a huge hats off to the amount of voice acting in this expansion. I think the fact that they could introduce so many characters that we cared for, from Nidana to the Lobrits to, we met a lot of people this expansion. Some of them we're going to keep, some of them we're not. And I think we cared for a lot of them because it was an incredible amount of voice acting.
Yeah.
Incredible amount of voice acting. I mean, Hermes is both familiar, but also new to us. And I know Hermes' voice actor tweeted out this weekend that like he's just been overwhelmed. His Japanese voice actor had tweeted out that he's just overwhelmed by the amount of support that he's gotten. And so there's the voice acting was phenomenal. The soundtrack was amazing as a callback. I will say that does not, in my opinion, opted into like best soundtrack, because it was a lot of remixes. It was a lot of callbacks. It was a lot of, so like for somebody that's not a Final Fantasy fan, I don't know that this soundtrack is as standout as Shadowbringers. As a longtime Final Fantasy XIV fan, however, the amount of fan service in this, Endwalker is the first time I have ever listened to Final Fantasy XIV music while not logged in game. I found myself sitting on the couch one night resting, and I turned on Answers on my phone and sat there with my eyes closed and just listened to it. Yeah. So like, I don't think it's as like standalone soundtrack, but as far as integration in the story, it was a masterpiece.
Well, and just like that, like I still stand by the fact that we haven't received a nom, for the Video Game Awards for music, and I still find that criminal. But
there's been a lot of other great sound. Yeah. It's not like it's just losing to people that are just playing the same two songs.
Like geez Louise,
there's a lot of great stuff happening in game sound right now.
But at its core, like when it comes down to it, when I look at the whole, in terms of it, like where Stormblood I felt was the weakest out of all of the like every, I would have to say expansion in case of ARR as a 1.0 player, but just in terms of that, like where that was kind of the weakest moment in the game's story, where I felt like it was redeemed in Shadowbringers through the Evil East, after the Evil East raid with Bozja. Like if I look at that as whole, I feel like that gets knocked up. But at the end of the day, I think when I look at what Metacritic says, it seems to reflect that this is a better expansion from the narrative perspective than what I got in Shadowbringers, because I feel like it had way more stakes than what Shadowbringers gave me. So if I was going to sit here and say like like which expansion is probably the best out of all of them, and like there could be a little bit of bias because I just having finished Endwalker, but I've been kind of pondering on this since then. I would think that Endwalker and Heaven's Word are right up there, and Shadowbringers is probably I would say right below Heaven's Word in terms of how I've experienced it over the long run. And not all that is Shadowbringers' fault, but those are still high praises, where ARR and then Stormblood is kind of the ending.
I felt that the people who I met in ARR were affected.
Yes.
And as opposed to when I was in the first, I was in the first.
Right.
So we weren't quite playing with live ammo. So like, I mean, yes, it mattered. It mattered to them,
and it mattered to the source, but
right?
they never
But
like they can't like write
but not
letters
in
to
the
each other.
same way that this did,
Right.
where like
everybody on the
Kyle,
first dies. So I felt like the first had an impact because they are going to go if the source goes, right?
Right.
The reflections all require the source to exist.
But like saying that like this is higher stakes than Shadowbringers, yes, because like this encompasses Shadowbringers, this encompasses Stormblood, this encompasses. So I think like there were some big moments where they called everybody in, and it was like, oh wow,
so cool.
Like this affects everybody.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was very much our like end game style moment. You can't do it again. You can't just pile them back to back. So it means next time it has to be more intimate. It doesn't mean it can't be meaningful. But I would say like as one last thing, and then we should record another video sometime this week about like where we want the game to go from here. Looking back, knowing what you know as of the credits rolling on Endwalker, you've completed the saga. This is the same as having watched all 9 Star Wars movies.
Yeah.
What is, in your opinion, the best way to replay this? Do you have to do every side quest? Do you have to do every role quest? Do you skip the raid quest? Do you do the expansions out of order? Is there anything weird? Is it straight through the MSQ? What matters? What doesn't? If you got to replay it today and you had to put everything on your plate that you were going to eat, what would you sit down and play through again?
I would do easily. The nice thing about the Crystal Tower is they added that as a part of the ARR MSQ. So that's like integrated into that and required, which is great because I was like, you have to absolutely do that. But then I all of a sudden go like, yeah, I would totally have to add Bahamut coil there. That's such a great callback, especially as you're looking for that refined adamantite. And then just having those options, Omega, absolutely, because having that option at the with the Omnicrons, it's like, yeah, hey guys, I have the thing, the jammer, and they're like, oh, what? And then it's like, oh, but we can't actually use it because we didn't actually animate that, or whatever the reason being. But so I would say, yeah, ARR, I would do any kind of quest that gets you flying, but I think I would ignore anything that any side dungeon content, any hard mode dungeon, like from just a pure playthrough perspective, like it would be raids. Yes, obviously the Void Arc. The Void Arc less so. I didn't feel as big of an impact from Void Arcs. Their little nod to the guy flying in the sky. Is your tech here?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Anyway, yeah. So ARR, I would just say MSQ, any kind of plus sign that isn't side dungeon, and then less so on raids. The trials. But yeah, I wouldn't prioritize the trials, but I would go in the raids and then yeah, and that's what I want to do. I want to replay the entire story now that it's done. I don't know when I will, but we'll find out. So
after Omni 90.
After Omni 90. Well, Chris is going to get his internet looked at and fixed. So hopefully he'll be live tomorrow and it won't be too cold. Hopefully the temperature doesn't impact his internet. We'll find out. So I'll go ahead and sign us off. Thanks guys for watching and listening. We love you. We'll hopefully see you in our next video. But until then,
take care.